Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy. I'm so happy you're here, and we are starting now. For our first project, I'm going to be using 3 of the Dollar Tree bottles, a mop head, 3 little pom-poms, and 3 sign picks, and then I end up using a Dollar Tree hand towel instead of the fluffy mop head. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off those metal parts at the top, the little stoppers, and then I'm going to take some painter's tape and just wrap that around about a little more than halfway up. And then I'm going to use my chalk paint to paint 1 in celery, 1 in crimson, and then 1 in white. And then I'll take that tape off, and then once the paint's dry, I'm going to reapply some more just below that line. So we're going to be painting the top parts of the bottle in the same 3 colors, but on different bottles. So on the red one, I'm going to paint the top of it white. On the green one, I'll paint the top of that one red. And then on the white one, I'll paint the top of that one green. So now I'm going to take my mop head and I'm just going to start pulling out those strands, and then I'm taking 1 full length and folding it in half, and then I'll fold it in half again so it's in quarters. And then at the top where they're all together, those loops, I'm going to take my hot glue and glue that onto the bottle just a little bit over where that line is from the 2 different colors of paint. And I'll place 4 different sets on each of my bottles, and that's going to become their beards. And then once they're all glued down, I'm going to cut the bottoms and get rid of the bottom loops, and then I'll start unraveling it with my fingers to make teeny tiny little strands. So then on my green bottle, I'm going to take some crimson red chalk paint, and then using a pencil eraser, I'm just going to make little polka dots. And then on the red and white one, I'm going to take a makeup sponge and cut that down so that it's more of a square and not a rectangle. And then I'll take my celery chalk paint, put it on a paper plate so that I can dab it off and just start going around making a checkerboard pattern. And then the closer you get up to the top of the bottle, because it starts to go inward, you're just going to go a little bit at a time so that it's a smaller square or a smaller part of that sponge, if that makes sense. And then on my red one, I'm going to take a piece of painter's tape and put that at the very top, and then just use that as a guide to make a couple of lines on the outside of that tape. And then I'll tape over those lines and make a thicker one in the middle so that we have kind of a flower sack stripe pattern. And I'm using my white paint pen here, but I didn't like that it had some streaks in it, so I ended up using my chalk paint to cover the thick line. But for the smaller lines, it was definitely better to use the paint pen. And I also ended up adding a second skinny line on the end, so there's 2 little lines on each side of the thick one. So then I took a white Dollar Tree hand towel and I cut it in 3 strips, and then I'm going to use my hot glue to make a fold over the top and the bottom to give it a clean edge and make that the rim of their hats. I was going to use that mop head, but it was a little too bulky and thick and didn't really show off the nose like I wanted it to, so I thought this was a perfect alternative. And then before I place these around their hats, I'm going to take my little pom-poms and hot glue that right in the middle of his beard, and then I'll wrap it around so that a teeny tiny bit will be underneath his rim. And then in the back, I'm just going to hot glue that down. And I didn't make a fold over clean edge thing because this is fluffy enough that once you put it together and hot glue it, it doesn't even show and there's no seam. So now I'm going to shape their beards and give them a ZZ top pointy end. And it was cute if you leave it like this too, but I wanted more of the bottle to show, so I just decided to give them a little haircut. And then I'm going to embellish their hats with some of this Dollar Tree greenery. And I decided which order I wanted them to sit in so that the colors look the best. So on the 2 end gnomes, I'm going to make that greenery go outward. And for the middle one, I'm going to make a center area at the top of his hat. And then once I got the greenery on there, I put some mini pine cones on there, and then I took some baker's twine and just made a sweet little bow, wrapped it around my fingers to make that, and then tied it with another piece, and then I'll glue that right under those pine cones. So then I took my little sign picks and I'm going to gently pull off the stick that's on there, and then with my white paint pen I'm going to write Merry and Bright. So it'll be one word on each sign. Now I didn't realize these signs are so small. I was trying to hold it down. It was a little bit challenging. So on the second and third ones I left the sticks on there. However, I didn't realize that the tops and bottoms of these signs are a little bit different, those little skinny white lines that go around there. So one of them is not like the others. So if you're doing this project, just be mindful of that. And if you mess up, at least put it in the middle. But I don't think it's too terribly noticeable. And then I just hot glued those right onto the beards and they're done. And here they are all finished, and I think these are so sweet, and you can just have fun with this and do whatever pattern you want on the hats. I love how these turned out, and I hope you like them too. I'm so excited to be kicking off the Christmas season with my sweet friend and sister in Christ, Leah Knepp, over at Beauty on Purpose. If you're not familiar with her channel, you won't be disappointed. Stop by after you watch this video. I'll have it linked in the description box below. Let her know that I sent you. She just hit 50,000 subscribers, and I'm so very proud of her. Also, a huge thank you and big hugs to our newest Patreon member, Pam Rudy. Thank you so much for your support. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart to the very tippy top. And now, without further ado, let's get back to crafting. For this Dollar Tree DIY, I'm just using 3 of the plastic canisters that you find. These are the larger ones, so you do have the option of making these in the smaller size too, but this is so easy and so fun. All I'm going to do is take my Waverly chalk paint in white and paint the bottoms of my canisters, and then in my crimson I'm going to paint the lids. And this will take a couple, maybe 2.5 coats to give it a full coverage. So then I'm going to measure the area of my canister, and then I used my CRICUT Explore Air 2 to cut out some words in my red adhesive vinyl, and one will say Elf Sweets, another will say Santa's Snacks, and the third one will say, I forgot what Reindeer Treats. But I will have these listed and available in my Etsy shop if you want to do this project. So once I got my decal all done, I'm just going to put it onto my canister. Of course, wait until it's completely dry so that you don't get any pull up. And if you do, just kind of touch it up with your chalk paint and then pull those off, and the hard work is already done. And then once I applied one decal, I'm just going to set my next canister next to it so that I can eyeball and see where to place my second one so that they're all level. And you can also make sure that your letters won't come off by giving it a little shot with your heat gun so that it kind of smushes onto that surface. And then I'm going to take my red and white baker's twine and wrap that around the rim, and then make another sweet little bow and attach that to the front, and it's done. And these are still functional, and you can put goodies inside of them because we're not putting anything that will keep it from being twisted open. And here's how they turned out, and I think these are so adorable. I can't wait to start my Christmas decorating. I still have all of my fall items out, but this is really getting me in the fa-la-la-la mood. Anyway, I love how these turned out, and I hope you like them too. Another super cinchy DIY, and this is kind of a twofer, but I'm using a ramekin and a dinner plate, and they both happen to be the perfect color red. They matched, and so I'm just going to attach this by tracing out where I want to put that ramekin, and then I'll use my all-purpose cement to attach it and let that dry. And it's perfect for just setting your cookies on or sweet treats. I didn't have any of those in the house, so instead I put my Dollar Tree gnomes on them. I love this little tray though, and it's going to be so functional, and I love the red. But that wasn't really the whole DIY. So I'm continuing with some of these really frosty greens that I love, and I'm just attaching them at the bottom. I first cut them all apart and then use some chenille stem to attach them, and then I'm going to use this pretty little gingham red and white ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just doing the fold over method and then making a big loop at the bottom because that's going to become our tails, and then I'll find the center of my bow and make teeny tiny little slits, and then wrap another piece of chenille stem around that and foof out my loops, and then I'm going to attach that to the bottom of my little greenery. So these are really convenient to have for all of your decorating. You can pop them anywhere or even just next to a picture frame, and it just foofs it up. So now I'm going to make a little Christmas display, and I first took one of these clear plate holders, and I'm using the lid of a canister that I got last year because I really like this design and it was perfect for the backdrop of this tray. And then I found these little bottle brush trees at the Dollar Tree in different sizes, and I'll place 3 of those over in the corner and then tuck in my little sprig of greens. And then I'm using a couple of these little branch slices, and then I placed a couple of smaller trees over on the other side and 2 of the antler ornaments. And you can see I'm not gluing anything down so that we can still use our beautiful tray. And here it is, all finished, and I think this is just so sweet and is a perfect centerpiece for your kitchen table or on an island or a shelf. But I love this, and I hope you guys like it too. For this Dollar Tree project, I'm using 4 of these adorable wall hooks, some adhesive brick wallpaper, and I had planned to use a couple of the long Dollar Tree signs, but this DIY kind of grew into a major piece. So the first thing I did was sanded off the wording of my frames and then made a black outline around all of that pretty filigree so that when I painted it with my chalk paint and ink, those edges would be completely covered. And then I distressed the edges and all of those inside curlicues, and I used my paint pen to get into those smaller nooks and crannies. Now I know some of you have told me you really don't like your handwriting and you don't have a cutting machine, so I printed out my words using the font Forestea script from defont.com. Oh, that's hard to say. And then cut them apart and rubbed the back of the paper with a piece of chalk, and then taped it to the frame, and then used an embossing tool to trace around those letters and transfer them onto the painted surface. And you can also do this with a pencil, which is actually a little bit better because you can see where you've already traced, and then you'll just go back and fill in your words with a white paint pen, and you don't even need a cutting machine. So like I said, I was going to use our regular Dollar Tree signs to make this, but something good always comes from the not so good. Our washer broke down and our dryer was on its last leg, so we had to get some new ones, which was definitely a blessing. But in the packing material, I found 2 MDF boards attached to some cardboard that looked like they might be the right size, and they were chunkier. So I just pulled those off of that cardboard, and then I attached them with some flat braces. I don't know what these are called, but they're flat and they're braces. But Michael J had them in his stash, and I think they were left over from the coffee mug rack we made a while back. Anyway, I had to add washers so that the screws wouldn't go through to the front. And then I used that brick wallpaper. That's what Dollar Tree has it labeled as wallpaper. You'd need a lot of these to cover a wall. And I found these next to the wall decals. So I just pulled off the backing sheet and pieced it together, and they matched up perfectly. And then I used my utility knife to trim the edge. So there was a little piece of wood showing at the top, so I found a scrap piece. I think it's a 1x4 or it could be a 1x3, I'm not sure. And I think that addition just took this to a whole nother level. So I mixed some of my mineral chalk paint with some antique wax to get this super pretty beigey color, and I just painted it on and then wiped some of it off so that the pretty wood grain would peek through. And then before I attached the top, I nailed in a sawtooth hanger that I recycled. And then I used my brad nailer and some heavy duty adhesive to get that shelf in place. And then finally, I tapped in some thumbtacks to hang my hooks. And I think the hardest part of this project was probably trying to get my spacing correct and make my frames level. And here it is, all finished. Now, I was super iffy about the brick at first, but how perfect would this be for an apartment, or if you don't have a fireplace? It's perfect for Christmas. I hung some sweet linen stockings from burlapfabric.com on there, along with our pretty greenery bundle, and then added my Dollar Tree etched vases from another video, my Christmas in July video. They say Christ the Savior is born, and I'm thinking, since I love this so much, I might decorate our bedroom for Christmas. So since we don't have a fireplace in there, this would be perfect. I love it, and I hope you like it too. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. Here's a couple of others that I think you might like. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!